Okay, welcome back to Thursdays with me. We're going to be doing boldface critical reasoning problems today. So, and again, there's your copyright notice right here. All of these problems are from the free GMAT prep software, which is copyright GMAC. When you submit problems, make sure that you do respect the difference between the free GMAT prep and the paid questions. Like if it ends with PAC, we can't use it. All the ones that end with PAC, like a question PAC or an exam PAC, those are all paid questions, and we cannot use them for free. So, okay. Let's do one boldface question. Remember, when you do these are multiple choice questions. When you have a question with multiple choice options, make sure you indicate your answer right there. Do not use the chat box for that, please. Okay, I'll give you, these ones, by the way, they have more words than other problems do, so I'll give you a little bit more time for them. Yeah, maybe like 2 to 3 minutes kind of thing. But remember, if you are stuck, you should bail. Okay, go for it. Okay, should be picking something. I mean, if you're still genuinely making progress with this question, then that's one thing, but it's kind of been a while at this point. So. And remember the way this test works. You can't not answer the questions. Like you actually have to. You have to respond one or the other. So otherwise, the question will just sit there on the screen until you answer it. So if you have to guess, you should guess. Let's wait maybe like 10 or 15 more seconds for people to make guesses here. Okay, so it's interesting. I mean, I don't normally post polling responses. There's still like 10 people who haven't answered the question. 2 of these people are me and Erwin, who is our tech support student services guy. But there's 10 non-responders here. But what's interesting about this is that there are 3 kind of popular answers here, which is interesting. Okay, so remember what the goal here is. I mean, the goal is to basically say, when it says what is the role of the statement, just make sure that you understand what that actually means. Like, it doesn't mean what is the statement. It means more like, why would somebody say something like this? Like, if someone said to me, somebody was like, hey, Ron, the fly zipper is down on your jeans. I mean, why would somebody tell me that? Why? Why would somebody say that to me? They would say, okay, abnormal is part of the point. Yeah, they would want me to fix it. It's a problem, right? They would say this. So just notice, exactly, I'm supposed to pull it up to like preserve my dignity or whatever, right? So like notice the difference between these 2 questions, right? If somebody said, why would someone say this? Or like, what's the role of this statement? The answer to that is, this is a problem, I need to fix it. Okay, notice that this is not the same thing as, like, one of the very beginner's mistakes that people make when they look at these questions is instead of answering the actual question, which is what is the role of the statement or why does someone say it, people instead answer the question of, like, what is the statement? I mean, the answer to what is this statement is something like, you know, it's the physical position of the zipper on my jeans. Yeah, that's why I said fly zipper, right? I mean, in America, we would just say your fly is down, but I figured people wouldn't know that, so that's why I put the word zipper there. So, notice these are not the same, right? The point is that you're not answering the question of what is the statement. So, but the thing I also want you to notice is that you can't, there's no rule that will let you figure this out, right? I mean, so a couple of things, the two most important things about this whole question of what's the role of the statement. Two things you want to notice here. The first thing is that there is absolutely no rule in the world that would tell you this. The second thing is, if you think of normal conversation, it's easier to understand this. You know, if you were thinking in very formal terms about this, there would be nothing you could really grab a hold of that would tell you this is a problem that needs to be fixed. But if you just think of people normally talking to each other in the world, why would you point down that the zipper is down on someone's pants? Well, yeah, it's a problem. You want to save them some embarrassment. So just keep this in mind, because when you do this, your biggest weapon that you have is the normal intuition that you have from just having everyday conversations. So, but yeah, so what you're asking is why? Why does the speaker say this? So, and I mean, when you do this kind of thing, I mean, the one thing that's interesting about it is that a lot of the time you don't have to have all the words. I mean, if you, let's take this to the next page. So here's the argument. And let's say that there's actually someone saying this. Astronomer. I have a friend who's actually getting her degree in astrophysics. Her name is Erica. So let's say Erica says this. Okay, if you imagine, I mean, again, if you're enough of a nerd that you would actually have these kinds of conversations with your friends and stuff, then that definitely helps. But if you can imagine someone actually saying these things, then the question is, like, why would that person be saying these things? So, I mean, even if you're not, the point is, on things like strengthen, weaken, assumption, those kind of questions, you probably do have to actually follow everything the words are saying. But on boldface questions, you don't. You don't really have to follow all the words. You don't have to follow all the words. Like, in the same way that if you heard a conversation through a wall or a door, like, if you just heard pieces of a conversation, then you would know, for the most part, why people were saying things. So, okay. So you don't even have to really waste your time reading all of the words here. I mean, like this, observations of the blah, 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 blah. Okay, so something showed that something happened. But something. Okay. That just means that that's going to be some sort of, wow, people observed something strange. Something weird happened. All right. In hopes of gaining some indication of something, astronomers studied something. And these analyses revealed something. So people looked at some stuff to try to find out more. People looked at some stuff. Okay. Now, this is the stuff that they found. This was some thing. They found this, but people believe something else. Okay, so what is going on here? Again, you don't really have to follow everything that's going on here. You just have to read the words. But so let's not blank those out because of the boldface. The first boldface is this. Like basically, they're describing some evidence, but people think something else. Now notice there's no transitions here. Like there's not really where I'm going to put this blue thing right there. There's no transition word where the blue thing is. Like there's no but or however or nonetheless or on the other hand. What does that mean, guys? If there's no, if Erica just keeps talking, what does that mean? Which side of the argument is this evidence on? It means there is a flow, yeah. Yeah, there's no opposition, right? I mean, notice this is important to understand. And you don't need to follow what the words say to understand this either, right? There's no contrast indicator. Like there's no however or nevertheless or on the other hand, etc. So what this means is first bold is on the same side of the argument. Is on Erica's, so she's the one talking. Because this is just, if you think about it, you don't need to like study this or memorize it or anything. You can just kind of think of how people deliver arguments. Like if anything was on the opposite side and then you started delivering your side, there would always be a transition. Like you would not even explicitly think about, oh, I need a transition. You would just put it there. You'd be like, blah, 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 blah. But I think da-da-da-da-da. Or however, or even though you have that. So, I mean, people just do that. They definitely just do it. So, and then the second boldface is, I think, and then it's since, so like it's based on what they just said, right? So since blah, 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 it is likely. So they're drawing some kind of conclusion based on what that evidence is. So the second boldface is speaker, so Erica, if Erica is the speaker, her conclusion based on the evidence, or based on what has been observed and or thought. But notice with these, like the biggest thing as far as being efficient with these problems is you don't have to read all the words. You don't even, you probably shouldn't even read all the words. I mean, that's part of what's being tested here, essentially, is your ability to see why the words are there without having to get all nitty-gritty with it. So, there you go. Any questions about this? But you can't really. I mean, there would have to be some sort of, you don't just deliver the other side of the argument and then your side without transitioning. I mean, people don't do that. Like, you wouldn't say something like, this person thinks blah, 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 and then just start saying, I think blah, 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 blah. That's not how it works. I mean, people don't do that. If you try to do that, like try making an argument that does that out loud, and you'll see how strange it is to try doing that. It's just not a thing that works. So, and also remember these problems on this test are never tricky, ever. Like there's nothing deceptive about the problems on this test. So, you know, even if you had somebody who could do that occasionally with things like body language and facial expressions, the words don't have facial expressions and stuff. So if they did that here, it would be tricky, and this test is all about not being tricky. So, but okay, so we have is, what is high? Maybe you can explain that. Ah, okay, cool. Oh, it's he. Got it. All right. So what we have here, here's what we've got from that previous analysis. First boldface describes some evidence, but people think da 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 da. Second boldface is the speaker's conclusion. So, all right, let's talk about it. So the second is definitely her conclusion. So that actually, and in fact, this is the entire explanation, because the rest of it is blah, 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 blah. People saw this, people think this. Therefore, it is likely that da, 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 da. So, I mean, the second thing is her conclusion. So, well, you still have to, I mean, you're not just reading the boldface here, because you need to, without having the sort of context of, okay, something weird happens and people are investigating it. If you don't at least look at the words enough to see that, then you can't really understand what is going on here. Like if you just started by reading this boldface, the problem is you wouldn't know what it was doing. Yeah, I mean, it's like hearing pieces of a conversation again. Like if you actually heard a conversation through a door or something, or walked into a room mid-conversation, you know, you could follow more than you would probably think you could, but at the same time, you probably couldn't follow everything without having some of those pieces from before. I mean, there are a few select cases where that'll work, especially if the boldfaces are like the only parts where someone else is saying something or something like that. But for the most part, you should at least, because you don't even have to read the words, right? Look at all this blacked out stuff. So because these are, you know, because you don't even have to read all the specifics, it's not like it's any kind of waste of time. So you might as well just do that. But okay, so the second part is definitely her conclusion. So we can pretty much get rid of the choices that say that it isn't. So that we can keep B and D. And the others are gone. So, because the other choices don't say that that's actually her point, whereas B and E do. I mean, okay, remember that the question about time management, remember that time management has nothing to do with minutes and seconds. Like if you have to look at a timer, that means that your time management is bad anyway. Like you should never have to look at the timer or think about minutes and seconds ever. If you are doing something productive and if you are getting somewhere, then you keep going, and if you are stuck, then you stop. That's all that time management is. Like if you are looking for stuff in the words, then keep going. If you are just looking at the words, then stop. That's all the time management you need. So no one cares about minutes and seconds, really. I mean, it should be obvious that these are probably going to take longer than the average, because look at it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this problem, so it's clearly longer than average. But thinking about minutes and seconds on individual questions is a huge, huge mistake. Okay, so this, and then of the two choices that are left, I mean, B is saying that something is counter evidence, and E is saying that it's on her side. Well, it's not counter evidence. So this is not true. Whereas it's in support of the conclusion, well, sure it is. So there you go. So there you go. If you think about people saying these things, there's a couple takeaways here. The first is you don't need to read all the words. Because of course you don't. I mean, especially when it comes to things that are very scientifically dense or very full of detail, like you don't really ever have to understand all of that to know why people are saying it. So, because again, if you got owned by the science, you read all the words, it means that you were not thinking about the task at hand. It means that you were not goal oriented. Like all you need to figure out is why are people saying stuff. You know, if you were in a courtroom and there was an expert witness who was delivering all this DNA evidence, and they were going on and on and on about chromatography and HPLC and stuff like that, you might not know what they were even saying, but you would still know, okay, this person is like giving a bunch of science to show that the suspect is guilty, or to show that the suspect is innocent, or something like that. So if this is the goal, you don't care what the science words say, because why would you care? So with that, there's nothing you can do as a backup or as an introductory strategy, one of the two. Like this usually won't solve entire problems, but either as a backup strategy or as an introductory move, like before going into the major eliminations, into the full task. Another thing you can do is you can just look at whether the boldface statements are facts or claims, and then you can eliminate any choices that get that backwards. I mean, facts, okay, like facts are things that are actually factual. Like facts have to be data or direct observations. Those are things that are facts. And if you know how courtrooms work, like facts are things that could actually be admitted as evidence in a courtroom. So basically, things that could be evidence in a court case. So I mean, if something is an opinion, then that clearly is not a fact. I mean, that's the whole point of saying that something is factual, is that it is not someone's judgment or opinion. And again, opinions are not evidence in a court case. Evidence is like, this happened at 7:15 p.m. on Thursday, or here is what the weather was like when the crime was committed, or things like that. And I mean, just make sure that you know the difference. Like, I mean, again, if it's not data, this is not a difficult or complicated idea, so don't make it difficult or complicated. I mean, if something is data or a direct observation, it is a fact. So, like, for example, if you have something like, this person is yelling obscenities at himself on the street corner, that's a fact. That's a direct observation. If you have, this person is insane, that's not a fact, because that's not data. It's not a direct observation. It's not factual. So if this business lost $2 billion in 5 minutes, okay, it's a fact. It's data. This business is badly run, still not factual. Like, even if you think it is obvious or whatever, it's still not actually a fact. So claims are everything else. Claims are things that are not facts. They're like what people think or whatever based on stuff, basically things, non-factual things. So, okay, someone asked in the chat box, can a fact be a conclusion? What do you guys think of that? This question here. Well, I mean, think about what would happen if you tried to make an argument that did that. Like, for example, here's a fact. I'm 41 years old. Okay, I mean, can you imagine having an argument that was like, blah, 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 therefore, I'm 41 years old. I mean, this is not a thing, right? This doesn't work. You can't have an argument that does this, because I do. If it's a fact, I can just tell it to you. I can just be like, guys, I'm 41 years old. So, no, conclusions are not ever going to be factual, because facts don't need arguments to support them. I mean, facts are just facts. So, nope. Because if you have a fact, it doesn't need an argument. So, smiley face, if that makes sense. Smiley face icon thing, if that makes sense. I mean, like, so that you can, I mean, if you have something that is pretty clearly a fact or like factual data evidence or something like that, then you know it's not the conclusion of an argument, because it can't be, right? So, there. I mean, yeah, business is badly run, but it has to be a claim, because that's still a matter of opinion. I mean, it might seem like it's really obvious to you or whatever, but it's still not a fact. It's not data, it's not a direct observation, and you couldn't submit that in a courtroom as evidence. Right, so, okay, so let's talk what these are. Like, boldface 1, many astronomers believe. This is not factual stuff. This is a belief. You could not submit this as evidence in a courtroom. This is not factual. This is a belief. Beliefs are not factual. So, yeah, if you ever say something like clearly or it is likely or must or whatever, yeah, those are never facts, right? Like, if someone says Ron must be about 41 years old, that means they're actually guessing my age, right? Versus, like, Ron is 41 years old, that means they know how old I am. So, and then the second boldface is also not factual. So, is also not a fact. And I mean, there are words that have to be facts. Like evidence definitely has to be fact. So are circumstances. Like things that are always facts. Well, first of all, if they say fact, that's a fact. Information, data, evidence, observations, circumstances, probably a couple of findings, that kind of thing. Those are all facts. Like circumstances are the facts that surround something, right? Like circumstances surrounding a crime would be things like it was raining, the defendant had just been fired from his job, it was 7:30 p.m. Those are facts. So, right, but this second part of this is clearly not factual. I mean, it even says many people believe this, so it's not evident. So it's not a circumstance. Circumstances are fact. So you can eliminate A just because it says that. And then it's evidence. It is likely that something is true is obviously not evidence. So, and then this is not evidence either. So you can also eliminate everything except for B and E just because they use words that mean facts. These things. I mean that's not factual, and neither is that. I mean this might be more efficient. I mean you can definitely do it as backup. But the reason you might want to think about doing it as some kind of introductory maneuver is that it might be even more efficient than going through these in more sort of depth or more completely or what have you. So this is by no means just any kind of exhaustive list, but if they use any of these 7 words, which are just the words that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, these things have to be facts all the time. These things cannot be anything other than facts. And that would not get to distinguish between E and B, you still have to notice that the black stuff is on Erica's side of the argument, which is pretty clear because there's no indicator of contrast. So if this was something that was on the other side, they would have to say blah, 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 but it's likely this anyway, or however, or nevertheless, it is still likely. They're not going to trick you by omitting those kinds of things. Cool. All right. Do another one here in a second. Let me find one. Let's see here. How about this one? Right here. Try that. And remember, it's multiple choice question. Don't forget where you get the answer choices to multiple choice questions. All right. Again, time management is really just, are you looking for things or are you just looking at things? If you are looking at things, that's bad. You should always have a goal. You should always be looking at words for a reason. Give it a shot. Okay, let's discuss. So you're not going to get anywhere with this problem with the whole, like, what type of, there's no fact versus not fact thing going on here, because Consideration could be anything. I mean, a consideration is just something that is considered by people making an argument. So considerations could be either facts or not. So that's not going to eliminate anything. And then strategies, I mean, this is a strategy, and this is also a course of action. So unlike the last problem, you're not going to get any quick eliminations from just like looking at the nouns that they use for the statements. But this one's not, and I mean, you'll notice a kind of inverse relationship with that. Like this problem right here is full of science crap. The problems that are full of science or economics or whatever crap are the problems where you'll get more eliminations like this one, where you can just be like circumstance, evidence, evidence. I mean, like that's something you should actually get here as a takeaway. Like the more convoluted or full of jargon, the more full of details the argument is, the more likely these kinds of backdoor eliminations are. Again, it's kind of like the quant section. In the quant section, if they give you a problem that's full of algebra and variables, it would clearly take you a very long time to do algebraically. Those are the problems where it is absolutely most likely that you'll be able to just plug in numbers or just do some kind of common sense type of elimination or something. Same thing is true here. Like this is a much shorter argument, and sure enough, and it's also not very hard to understand. So this argument is not, there's no jargon, there's no complex science details or anything in this argument. So, and sure enough, to go with that, you can't eliminate. There's no quick elimination so much. So, but okay, I mean, but you can just read it and say like, why does the person? I mean, okay. Someone give me a name of the speaker here. Who's the person talking in this argument? It shouldn't be Ron because you think of, let's make it Aaron. Okay, you shouldn't make it Ron because the point of naming the speaker is to step out of the whole like classroom experience. Because if you think like you're in a classroom doing academic or test things, then that's where you lose all that intuition that you get from normal conversation, right? But if you just imagine someone saying this, so the first name that popped up in the chat box was Aaron, let's just use that. So if you imagine a person saying these things, right? I mean, like what is Aaron's main point? Like what the purpose of this entire argument is, like what is Aaron's main deal here? Yeah, okay, it's basically what Craig says. So let's put that on the board. Aaron's argument, the whole point that Aaron is trying to make here is, so the disadvantage of the common strategy is not the main point, though. The main point is to argue that you should follow this other strategy. So Aaron's main point here is that we can make more profits by not charging the max price. So now notice, what is the goal here? What's the goal? The goal is to make more profits. That is the goal. Like a lot of you guys pick choice E. But choice E is wrong because the argument does not reject pursuing a goal. I mean, the goal is this. And Aaron is not saying it's wrong to try to make more profits. So the goal of the strategy is that. And then this, not charging the maximum price, is the strategy or the course of action that is undertaken to try to achieve that goal. So this is strategy or course of action that Aaron recommends in pursuit of that goal. I mean, remember, you should never, if you have to ask a question that starts with, would it be too technical? The answer is always yes, it's too technical. I mean, you never have to nitpick to get these questions right. Like, the ones that are wrong are going to be wrong for reasons that are pretty big deals. Like, I mean, this one, E should be a pretty straightforward elimination because you are not rejecting a goal. Like, Aaron doesn't reject any goals. I mean, Aaron rejects a strategy, but not a goal. So, yeah, I mean, everybody has the same goal in this situation. Yeah, no goals are rejected. I mean, everyone's got the same goal. Profit, maximize profit is the goal. So no one is rejecting a goal. So definitely not E. Okay, but let's talk about why. I mean, like, why does Aaron... Make sure you are answering the question of why and not what. I mean, it's kind of like with the fly is down thing, like the what. I mean, you might want to answer these questions in sequence. I mean, you might want to answer 2 questions one by one if you have trouble with these kinds of things. The first question is, what is this statement? And the second question, which will never be the same as the first one, is why? Because, I mean, okay, like, what is the statement is kind of like the zipper, the position of the zipper on your jeans or something. So, what is it? Well, what is the statement? Don't come at it with fancy words. I don't know why everyone is thinking that the answer is D. I mean, seems like there's a big crowd in the chat box that has suddenly decided that the answer is D, but the answer is not D, guys. But it's, who cares about the answer choices right now? Forget the answer choices. Forget them. That's not how you do this. I mean, remember, you do not do these problems by going through the choices one by one and trying to make the choices correct. Make sure you never, ever, ever, ever do that. I mean, what you should do is go, you have a person named Aaron who is talking, and you want to try to understand why Aaron is saying things, and then you go to the choices. But never do that. Never go through the choices and try to justify them one by one. Like, that's the best way to get, like, all of these things wrong. I mean, okay, just like literally, what is this statement? Like, what is Aaron describing here? Like, not even why yet, just what. What is that? It's a strategy that other people use strategy. I mean, along with the reasoning behind it. So that other people recommend or use, along with the reasoning behind it. Now, why does Aaron mention this? I mean, he thinks it's the wrong strategy, but it's more than just he thinks it's the wrong strategy. Because like if you look at the reasoning, look at how his reasoning works. He's not even saying the strategy itself is actually flawed. He's saying like here's what a lot of people do, but when people do that, then it brings in a bunch of competition right away. So he says, he points out, when people follow this strategy, which is not even necessarily flawed from a finance standpoint. I mean, like, if you're just thinking about profits in a contained universe, then you would want to charge the maximum price that you can get away with charging. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But he's saying when people follow this strategy, competition arises faster. And that's the reason why his strategy is actually better. That's why he's saying it. He's saying that's the reason why his strategy, which makes less sense in pure financial terms. I mean, his strategy is not what an economic book would recommend, right? I mean, this is charging less than the optimal price is not the simple economically optimal strategy. But it's because of the consequences of this. He points out that, and the reason why he points this out is to justify his own strategy. Because like this is the thing, right? You actually can't. If you imagine being Aaron and trying to make this argument, just like if you ask yourself, what is the reason why he recommends this strategy? I mean, this is another way to come at this, because this is another here. Here's the argument. Okay. Like, notice what Aaron is doing and notice what Aaron's not doing. Like, I mean, some arguments actually, like, as opposed to something like this, as opposed to something like those guys use strategy X, but strategy X is a bad strategy because of some number of reasons, right? I recommend strategy Y because other reasons. This is not what's happening here. I mean, it's important to realize that Aaron is not doing this. This is what Aaron is not doing. I mean, what is Aaron's only reasoning behind his strategy? That's the goal behind it. But like, what is his evidence for his strategy, or what is his not evidence? What is his argument for his strategy? And what's the like? If Aaron is saying those guys use strategy X, and I mean strategy X may not be a bad strategy, but Aaron is saying I recommend strategy Y. And notice the only reason why Aaron recommends strategy Y is because bad stuff happens when you use strategy X. This is Aaron's only evidence, or his only reasoning for his strategy. And this is literally the only justification he gives for his own. I mean, he doesn't give any independent reasons, right? This is literally the only justification that Aaron gives for his strategy. Like, there are no independent reasons at all. So the point is that he has to bring up strategy X, otherwise he has no argument. This is the point. Like, he has to mention this stuff. I might as well color code it. It's the same color as that. I mean, it's not just, okay, this is an alternate strategy that we reject. I mean, the point is that he actually has to mention this information because it's the only justification he has for his own argument. So, I mean, this is not really, like, subtle. I mean, if it were subtle, it would be like some small corner of some piece of something, but it's not. It's like the entirety of his argument. I mean, if you tried to take that blue thing away, then he would have zero justification left for this. So, yeah. So he says it because it's the only reason why. So not only is it a strategy that the other people don't use, but also it's the only justification. So if you look at what we have here, also, I mean, the biggest problem with D is that there's no assumption here. I mean, what is being assumed? I mean, these are things that actually happen. I mean, there's no, like, no one is assuming that something will happen ahead of time. I mean, it's not, right? This is, that thing consists entirely of observations of what people actually do. It's not an assumption. First bold is observations of what? Like, they're factual observations of what people actually do. So, what's the difference between B and C? I mean, you can get rid of A pretty quickly, by the way. Let's eliminate A. I mean, A says a strategy, but then Aaron is not saying that the second strategy is counterproductive. So A is backwards. I mean, Aaron actually likes this. I mean, Aaron is endorsing the strategy. So he doesn't think boldface number 2 is counterproductive. I mean, notice the words that strategy would refer to the same strategy they were talking about in the other blank. So according to choice A here, Aaron is actually arguing against his own strategy, which is definitely not true. So we can get rid of that. So the only difference really between B and C is whether this actually supports it or whether it is something raised to explain the appeal. So what is the actual thing that supports the strategy? Kind of running out of colors here, but let's make this brown. Like this part right here, that statement is the actual support for Aaron's strategy. Like this is the thing that is there for blah, 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 blah. Like this is the actual support for Aaron's strategy right here. Because he says, basically, this, therefore, my strategy. So the support will be found in that statement. The support is the fact that that actually brings other competition in. Not the blue thing. The blue thing is not directly supporting his argument. That's just like what the other guys are doing. Here's what the other guys are doing. But when they do that, it makes these terrible, terrible things happen. Aha. So you should actually follow my strategy instead. So it's not raised directly in support of it. So this is not happening. On the other hand, this is more like if you think about what this language means. And why does this other strategy have the appeal that it has? Like, why does this strategy have the appeal that it has? Like that's what's going on here. Like if you look at this kind of breakdown here, this strategy doesn't have a formal justification in terms of economics so much. Like you can't argue blah, 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 profit, blah, 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 therefore you should do this. I mean, the reason why this strategy has appeal is because when people follow what is supposed to be the optimal strategy, stuff happens that is bad. So, also, and even so, I mean, even the support here is not really support. It's more like, so actually what I wrote up there is wrong so much. It's not directly support. This is more like, this is the reason why the other strategy is bad. That's a more accurate way to say it. Because if you think about it, support would have to actually be direct support. And if you look at this argument, Aaron doesn't really supply any direct support. for his strategy. He just breaks, he just knocks down the other strategy. And I mean, they are very literal in their use of words here. Like if they say that something is a supporting statement, then it's a supporting statement. That means that you could actually just have an argument consisting of that, therefore, conclusion. So, I mean, someone's asking about 2 minutes in the chat box. You must have not been here for the first 45 minutes or so of the session. I mean, we already went through this, but first of all, thinking about minutes and seconds, if you are even thinking about minutes and seconds, it means your time management is bad. I mean, time management is not minutes and seconds. It's just, am I stuck or am I not stuck? Do I have a goal here or am I just staring at words? That's all. And then the other thing is, I mean, these problems are clearly longer than the average critical reasoning problem, so that means they're going to take longer than average. I mean, remember that there will be just as many problems that take over the average time as there will be problems that take under the average time. So okay, what, A, B, I'm not really sure what you are trying to ask. Maybe there's a way that you can reword that. I mean, it does. I mean, that is what this boils down to, but it is, you can see that it's not support. I mean, it's not blue thing, therefore strategy. So that is a word, but it's a word that is pretty clearly not happening here, right? It's not, the argument is not blah, 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 this, therefore, that. Because it isn't. That's just not how it proceeds. So, but the first boldface is not a counterpoint. I mean, the first boldface is the start of Aaron's reasoning. He's saying companies do this. Here's what happens when companies do that. So we should do this instead. I mean, it's not a counterpoint. Like someone is not saying this on the other side of any issue. So, yeah, the second part does refer to a single strategy. So, because remember, the main goal, I mean, this was something you guys had very little trouble telling me, is this is the single strategy that Aaron is ultimately advocating. And this is the goal. So you guys figured that out pretty early, at least when I was asking you to figure it out. So, because remember, this is also why we named the speaker. I mean, the argument is the speaker. So, and I mean, the second is the strategy that this speaker is. No, if it seems like Aaron has a different strategy in the first sentence, then you're not understanding this as much as you should. I mean, Aaron is saying, here's what companies do. And then when they do that, bad things happen. But if you look at the original wording of this, it's pretty clear that this is not Aaron's strategy. Because he's just saying other people do this. So this is not Aaron's strategy. This is just, here's what people do. In other words, it's not Aaron's strategy. If you thought that was Aaron's strategy and that he was like changing his strategy, then you read this too fast or something like that. I mean, because these kinds of words, I mean, this is definitely a third-party description. Like, here is what other people do. And unless Aaron is like, okay, this is ultimately justified, or like this original strategy turns out to be the best. Like, unless something like that happens, then, it's not his. It's not his strategy. Okay. Cool. So we definitely don't have enough time to do another one of these, but we will probably do some more of them in the next session that we have, which is the 23rd. There's going to be two of these. There's one of these on the 23rd and one of these on the 30th. Those are consecutive weeks. And then there's not going to be one for about 3 or 4 weeks after that. So we're going to do some more boldface stuff, I think, in the next session. I'll dig up a couple more of them. And then, so 23rd and the 30th, and then there's a few weeks break for most of July. Okay. Yeah, again, I mean, if you A/B, maybe you just logged in or something like that, but this is like the whole discussion of the last 15 minutes or so. Like, this is the strategy, that green thing. This. Like, all of it is ultimately mentioned so that Aaron can make his case for the green thing. So, I mean, that's Muhammad, that's pretty much what it is. It's that. That's what the other guys do. The reason he mentions that's what the other guys do is because that's the line of reasoning behind his strategy. The argument for his strategy is the other guy's strategy has bad consequences. Therefore, use mine instead. Is what they're saying. So, yep. Okay. Let's kill it a couple of minutes early here. And then more of these things, probably do more of these things on the 23rd. So, I'll see you guys then. Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, good luck.